I'm the Story Girl, and welcome to the story of the Goose Girl. Once there was a queen who was celebrating for at last her daughter would wed a very advantageous marriage to the prince of a much stronger, more wealthy kingdom just down the road. Well, she was a poor queen herself and didn't have money to spend on a fine entourage for her beloved daughter, for many servants to walk before her and guards to carry swords all around her. She could only give her 3 things. 1, the strongest, most noble steed in her stables. This horse was so intelligent, some say that it was the fabled talking horse of legend. 2, a handkerchief on which had been spilled a drop of the queen's own royal blood. She took this and bound it in a necklace which she put around her daughter's neck and proclaimed, "My daughter, as long as you bear this drop of my blood, no harm should be able to come upon you. No natural or human force will be able to work their wiles against you. It will protect you." And 3rd, she gave her a maid that had been hired when she was a much younger girl and had been brought up in the castle. This maid was to see her to her new life, was to guard her and to serve her for the remainder of her days. And with that very little ceremony, the princess and her maid rode off down the street. It was a very long journey to the kingdom just down the street, and very soon the princess became thirsty. "Oh, I am thirsty. Maid, will you take my golden goblet down to that stream I see over there and get me a drink of water?" "Get it yourself," said the maid, who turned out to be a very nasty kind of maid. "For I do not intend to be your servant any longer. I shouldn't have to care if you have a thirst." Well, the poor princess had never been spoken to this way before in her life. She didn't know what to do. So she got her golden goblet, dropped down from her magic talking horse, filled it up with stream water, and whispered to the stream, "Oh, stream, should a queen's daughter be treated this way?" And the stream whispered back, "Princess, if your mother only knew, her loving heart would be broke in two." I know what you're thinking. The stream was talking. It gets weirder. Well, they rode further down the road, and again the princess was thirsty. She looked over at her maid and said, "Oh, I am thirsty." "Well, don't bother me about it," said the maid. "I don't intend to be your servant any longer." The princess dropped down from her horse and whispered to the horse, "Oh, should a queen's daughter be treated this way?" And the horse opened his mouth and said, "Princess, if your mother only knew, her loving heart would surely break in two." The horse talks too. The princess takes her goblet down to the stream, but as she's bending over, she doesn't notice that the necklace round her neck with the magic drop of queenly blood drops off and floats down the stream. The princess didn't notice, but somebody noticed. The nasty maid saw the little drop of blood handkerchief float down the stream. "Finally," she said, and she popped down from her horse and said, "Now, girl, you and I are going to trade clothes, trade horses, trade luggage. Be quick about it now." Well, the princess had never been talked to this way before, so she did as she was told. She traded clothes with the maid, and she traded traded horses and traded luggage. Now, said the maid, when we come to the castle, you will stay in the yard with the other servants, and I will be presented before the king. I will marry the prince and be the ruler of this much stronger, more powerful nation, and you will not say a word. You will stay where you belong, and if you utter a word of this, I will make sure you never speak again. So the fake princess and the real princess, now dressed as a maid, rode off to the castle. And they were received with great fanfare and cheering, and all of the people rallied around their new princess. And nobody even noticed the little maid riding the rickety old horse behind her. The fake princess strode up to the castle and said, "Your Majesty, I've arrived. I really have arrived. Welcome, my daughter. Your marriage will take place in a month from today." But who is that? Oh, she's nobody. She's my maid. The king looked at the girl and saw that she was weeping. Weeping? Why is your maid crying like that? Is she all right? Oh, she's fine. She's just a little homesick. Maybe you could give her some work to do to make her feel more at home. Really hard work. Oh, don't have any really hard work to do around here. But I might be able to find something for her to do with the servants. Yes, put her to work. She deserves it. Well, the king asked around. He asked his steward, he asked the head housemaid, asked the cook. There weren't any positions open until he asked the stable master. "Oh, there's nothing to be done in the stables, Your Majesty. But the goose boy says he could use some help. There are a lot of geese in the flock." The goose boy was a bit like a shepherd, but instead of having sheep, he had geese. All these little honkers that would peck him about, he would herd them out to the land where they would eat bugs and insects all day long until they got fat and lazy, and then he would herd them back. Wow, that seems like a fine thing for a young girl to be able to do. Do you mind if we had this maid become a goose girl? Not at all, Your Majesty. I'm sure that the goose boy would love the help. The goose boy's name was Conrad, and so the true princess was taken away to work as a goose girl with Conrad, the goose boy. Up in the castle, the maid, the fake princess, was making herself right at home, bossing around the servants, sending people to do very difficult labor, having them scrub her shoes, having them brush her clothes, having everybody bow before her whenever she walked into the room. The prince was a bit fed up with it all. "Really? Is this how things are done in your little kingdom down the road?" "Oh, yes, Your Highness. This is exactly how we act in my kingdom. And I just had a request. Could you do just an itsy-bitsy little thing for me?" "I guess so," said the prince. "Perfect. My horse that I rode here on is such a misbehaved creature. It almost threw me twice. Chop off its head." "Chop off its what? You said you would do whatever I asked, Princey." "Very well." So the prince ordered that the magic talking horse be executed. Well, the fake princess was so evil she didn't stop there, killing the beautiful steed from the princess's home. She had that head attached above the very gate that the goose girl would be walking underneath every single day to take the geese out to pasture. I can't have that talking horse interfering with my plans," said the fake princess. So every day the Goose Girl would go with Conrad the Goose Boy and herd the geese underneath the gate where her beautiful horse's head was attached. And every single day the Goose Girl would look up at the horse and say, "My horse, is this any way to treat a queen's daughter?" And the horse would call back, "Princess, if your mother only knew, her loving heart would surely break in two." I know what you're thinking. Isn't the horse's head dead? Yes, but it was a magic horse after all. The two would herd the geese into the pasture, and the geese could take care of themselves, honking at each other, swatting at the weeds with their wings, running about. And so the Goose Girl would sit down and unbraid her hair and take a moment to brush it all out so it was beautiful and shining. Well, Conrad, the Goose Boy, saw her unbraiding her beautiful yellow hair and thought, "Oh, it would be a nice thing to have a piece of that hair. I think I'll creep up on her and get her." Well, Conrad had a plan, but he was not the best at creeping up on people. The Goose Girl heard him creeping up and whispered, "Wind, wind, blow Conrad's hat away." And the wind picked up with such a ferocity that it popped Conrad's hat right off his head and blew it away, so that he spent the next half hour chasing his hat around the grounds till he finally caught it, looked up and saw that the Goose Girl had rebraided her hair and tucked it up underneath her bonnet. Didn't want that golden hair anyway, and the two herded the geese back to the geese pens. This exact same sequence of events happened every single day. The two took the geese to the pasture. The princess would address the horse's head, and it would call down, "Princess, if your mother only knew, her loving heart would break in two." And they would go take the geese to the pasture. The Goose Girl would unbraid her hair and begin to brush it out. Conrad would try to creep up on her. She would whisper to the wind to blow his hat away, and he would chase his hat around the pasture for a half hour until her hair was braided and tucked back in under her bonnet. Well, after about a half hour of this treatment, Conrad was upset. After 2 days, he was angry. After a week, he went to see the king. "Your Majesty," he said, "you must get me a new Goose Girl." "Oh, Conrad, what's wrong with this Goose Girl?" "What's wrong with this Goose Girl? Every single day she talks to a horse's head that's stapled up onto the wall, and it talks back. Every single day she brushes her hair and then makes my hat fly away, and I am sick of it." "She does all of that?" said the king. "Yes, and I am sick of it," said Conrad. I'd like to see some of that for myself. I'll see about getting you a new Goose Girl. Try to stay with this Goose Girl for the next day or two. I'll see what I can do for you, Conrad." This king did his best to make sure that his servants were well taken care of, because he knew that well taken care of servants would take good care of his kingdom. So the next day, the Goose Girl and the Goose Boy herded the geese underneath the arch, and the Goose Girl called out to her magic talking horse, and he called out back to her, and she unbraided her hair, and Conrad crept up, and the hat blew away. But this time, the king was lurking, hiding in the bushes, poking his head out from behind trees, and he saw every single strange occurrence. He saw and heard everything that happened. What a strange way for a mere maid to behave. The next day, he called for the Goose Girl to come before him. "My dear, I understand that You've been working as a goose girl. How do you like that? It's fine, Your Majesty. She looked down. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Conrad was here. He said that you were doing some strange things. Why? Why would you talk to a dead horse's head? How can you talk to the wind the way that you do? Oh, it's nothing, Your Majesty. I'll stop. I know that something's the matter. You know, you can speak to me about anything. If you need anything, I can help. Nobody can help, said the Goose Girl. Fine, said the king. Fine. You can't tell me. Oh. You know, often when I'm in this very room, and there's nobody else here to hear my thoughts, I tell them to that black stove over there. It's a good listener. If you have anything to say, tell it to that black stove. And the king left the room. As soon as the king was gone, the Goose Girl broke into tears and ran to the stove and poured out her little milksop heart about how she was born a queen's daughter but was transformed into nothing more than a goose girl by a nasty maid. But she didn't know us. The king had a secret entrance to this very room, and as soon as he had left the room, he had gone around to his secret entrance and was listening in to every word the Goose Girl said to the stove. Well, as soon as she was finished, he burst out from his hiding place and said, "I thought there was something the matter with that nasty fake princess!" And he had the Goose Girl taken away to a suite of rooms that were more beautiful than any she had ever seen. And she was given the most beautiful clothes that she had ever seen. And she was given an army of servants to do her bidding and dress her up in the most regal of attire and jewelry that had ever been witnessed upon any woman in the world. And that night, when she arrived at the dinner table, the fake princess didn't even recognize her. Oh, it must be a visiting dignitary, a princess from a different country. I must show her that I am the more superior princess. My dear, said the king to the fake princess, I have a bit of a problem. There is a traitor in this kingdom that we've found and we need to bring to justice. But what kind of justice should be done to a person who's been masquerading as one of the royal family, as one of my own children, who has been stealing from my own purse and pocket, and who had everybody convinced that they were not who we thought they were? Well, the fake princess smiled her most nasty smile and said, "Oh, Your Majesty, such a person needs to be dealt with delicately. That person should be tied to a wagon and be driven through the streets of town while everybody throws rotten cabbages at them and shouts boo in their face. And then, to teach them a lesson about stealing, they should be sent to work in the royal mines until they have paid back everything they have stolen. That's what should happen to them." "Yes," said the fake princess, "and they should never be allowed to see the light of day." "Aha, I like the way you think. You are the very person, the traitor that has pretended to be a princess, tried to fool us all. All the things you said will be done to you." And the fake princess was dragged away from the dinner table, kicking and screaming and being prepared to have vegetables thrown at her. The Goose Girl, who is now a princess again, was married to the prince, and they went, both of them, to see her mother, the queen, whose heart never did break in two. The end. I am the story girl, though sometimes people call me the dragon girl, even though I've never herded dragons anywhere. Yet. One day. In this story is an excellent cautionary tale about being sure you have the right princess before you marry them to your prince. You may have noticed, this story is a bit strange. I've read many different versions of this story, and for some reason, the goose boy, Conrad, always is named. Not even the main character, the Goose Girl, has a proper name. Why might that be? If you could name every character in this story, what names would you give them? The Goose Girl, the fake princess, the kind king, the prince in the shadows, the queen mother. What would you name them? Bonus points to people who name the horse and at least 5 geese. Thank you for joining the story today. If you would like more stories, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I post stories every Tuesday, and follow me on Facebook, on Instagram. I would love to be able to communicate with you all. I give teasers, sneak peeks of new stories, and we might be doing a live story in a few months, so keep your eyes open for that. Bye!